the years, Park City has become a well-known destination. Park City experienced an unprecedented economic boom before seemingly the whole world went bust. With us today to discuss these issues is Jonathan Weidenhamer, Economic Development Manager from Park City. Jonathan, thank you very much for joining us.
Good morning. Thanks for having me.
Let's start with just a brief outline or objective of what the Economic Development Department of Park City does. What's your purpose and function?
Sure. Well, let's start with what the Economic Development Department isn't.
Okay.
What we aren't is chasing jobs, trying to create industry, trying to build more of a tax base necessarily.
Mm-hmm.
We have a pretty good resort-based economy in place with our skiing resorts and our outdoor amenities. So what my team ends up doing is creating place, mitigating for the impacts of the tourism economy. We regulate special events and produce special events, and we also build a lot of capital projects. My team also ends up being the utility infielder for the city. So if it doesn't have a right place to fit, my team ends up coming in and trying to help it out.
Department, huh?
So, it's a lot of fun. We do some business development with our business community. We're the liaison. We provide an avenue for them to communicate their needs or their challenges with policies that the city's pursuing or programs that we're running. But in the end of the day, we're not your traditional economic development department.
I see. Now, do you represent Summit County or Park City itself?
We're exclusively Park City Municipal, which is corporate city limits, runs from the White Barn on the way into the town and on the other end out of town out to about where the hospital is, or Highway 40. We do work closely with my counterparts in Summit County, and we do some regional planning together. Jeff Jones and his group in the Summit County offices, but no, we represent only the city of Park City.
Mm-hmm. How would you say the Park City business community has managed amid the COVID and the economic downturn that's resulted?
Bluntly, I would say resilient and fairly strong. You mentioned the Olympics. We've done very well and been unprecedented in our growth since 2002. Even the 2008 recession didn't really seat us down too hard. We kind of leveled out. Mm-hmm. And so when COVID hit, we were experiencing double-digit year-over-year growth for about 2 or 3 years in a row, mostly based on our lodging economy and the influx of 4- and 5-star hotels. And when COVID hit, we slowed down a bit. We lost a few small businesses that maybe already didn't have what I call sustainable business plan. But by and large, we took a few months off. We leveled out by late summer. And by March the next year, we were back to record-setting growth, even when compared to 2019. Mm-hmm. So we've done extraordinarily well.
Most communities, most businesses are experiencing labor shortages. Unemployment nationally is somewhere around 4%. Utah is somewhere around 2%. How is Park City dealing with this labor shortage? And are, in fact, you experiencing labor shortage?
We are. I would say that's the biggest threat to our economy, frankly, is a labor shortage. We import or grow about 5,500 or 6,000 jobs each winter season. And about 3,000 of those come from J1 and H-2B visas.
What does that mean?
It's so the state works with a federal program to import people from foreign countries. Usually there's 2 different types. One are, I can't remember which is which, but one is like the grad student who wants to come and learn a little bit about America and practice their skills, and they're here for a season. The other is a more technical person that's going to have a management job or a more specific skilled job. And the resorts usually bring in about 3,000 of those, and it comes through a state program. We could really use to grow our number of eligible visa people. There's a certain cutoff. States only get certain amounts. And so that helps the problem. But we're seeing you mentioned it, the competition in the regional economy, whether it's in the Wasatch Back and Heber and Wasatch County, or whether it's how great Salt Lake City and Salt Lake County are doing in the rest of the state. By and large, that's creating more competition where traditionally people would be happy to come up and participate in our service economy, get a great hourly rate, make a lot of tips, drive back down the hill. But the economy here is competitive from a wage standpoint. And with gas being north of $4 a gallon, it starts to be really competitive.
Sure.
So we're actually struggling quite a bit.
So would you say it's acute or currently manageable?
I'm not sure how manageable it is. I
Mhm.
don't I'm not sure where it's going. We're working very hard with our resorts. The Chamber of Commerce locally is leading the effort to try to hold that conversation and recognize those challenges. And we're trying not to cannibalize each other or
Of
cannibalize
course.
the rest of the state. So it's acute, but at the end of the day, when you see our tax numbers, when you see the growth, a logical outcome is that our businesses are going to have to start spending more of their bottom line on their people,
Mhm.
and that's happening.
Is the city population itself growing?
We're not. We're very stable. I mean, we're growing a little less than 200 folks a year, so less than 1,000
That's
people in the
interesting.
past
That's
census.
surprising. How about the business community? Are you
Business
seeing?
community is growing substantially, but we're not growing in terms of quantity or numbers of business. We're growing in terms of product or revenue,
Mhm.
meaning the existing businesses are doing more. And frankly, I think they're just doing a higher price point.
I see.
And so our sales tax numbers are up. And again, we're doing more than double digit growth, almost in 20% area year over year, COVID blip aside. And where we did see a very acute change that surprised us when we started to look at our post COVID numbers was online sales. That was something that had been trending, but it was a huge jump that really surprised us this year. And what that starts to suggest to us is that our regional economy, which before was like a 4, maybe 6 hour drive market, you'd see some of Arizona, a little bit of California, some Nevada driving here. But now we're seeing, for a short visit, a couple of weeks, now we're
Mhm.
seeing 2 and 3 month visitors from the far reaches of California and Texas and Denver and Colorado. People are posting up in town and staying for 2 months, 3 months at a time for the whole summer. And they're outfitting their second home or their VRBO to make it comfortable with home furnishings and dishes and pots and pans. And so when you look at that day-to-day aggregate of that online sales, it's these tiny little transactions and nail coloring and toilet
Mhm.
paper, just funny things you'd never
Sure.
think it would add up. It's been a huge influence on our
Interesting.
tax base.
Very interesting. Reportedly, in most areas, there is a shortage of affordable housing. So, given the kind of unique environment that you're in Park City, how are you addressing that issue?
I would say this one is very acute. The two biggest challenges aside from labor is again transportation congestion and traffic, because we export so much of our technical resources into Salt Lake and onto airplanes, and import so many service workers, um, because we have nowhere for them to live. The
Hmm.
cost of living is far too expensive. So the city is doing a number of things ourselves. From a legislative standpoint, we're loosening up our codes to subsidize or effectuate more affordable housing by allowing increased height, increased density, reduced setbacks, no parking requirements, so that our codes are helping people drive an individual return on a pro forma for a project. We're also developing our own housing. We've been in the capital business of building housing for a number of years now. Um, Whether we should be in that business or not is another story, but what that gets to us is our third prong, which is we've just released some land that the city owns into a joint venture, a public-private partnership, where we're bringing in a housing developer expert. We're providing the land. We think that might be the most efficient or most fiduciary responsible way
Hmm.
to use the public's money to build affordable housing. And
Hmm.
so we have been focused on year-round residents, so city hall workers, firefighters, those kind of things, teachers. But we're having a community discussion right now on whether we should be building housing for service workers. The people, those 6,000 jobs that come in. Would we be better served building a 2,000 room dormitory right in the center of town where kids can walk to either resort, they can get to the local grocery stores, they can visit Main Street and not have to get in a car?
Hmm.
And I think we're trying to figure that out. What's the city's role in getting into that, or should it be done by the ski resorts, who appear to
Sure.
be doing very well?
Well, I'd like to follow up on that. That's an interesting concept. If I understand what you just said, the city itself is in the home construction business.
We are.
What type of homes and how many on an annual basis are you building?
Well, we've been in this game for about 5 years, so it takes a while to build that pipeline by the time you get a project designed and through the entitlement process and then brought into the market. I think we've probably brought maybe 40 units, and the first probably 20 or 30 were redevelopment of historic homes and some infill. So you're talking 1,200 to 2,400 square feet single family homes and some townhomes. The projects that we're designing now are 1,000 to 2,000 square foot townhomes, 1 to 3 bedroom townhomes. So more dense, less parking, smaller families. And the projects that are next in the pipeline after that are 800 and 900, 300 and 400 square foot apartments, much more dense, much smaller, very starter oriented. These are the people that maybe were a ski bum that said, hey, I want to see if I can make Park City a go, but I can't figure out how to enter. Let me try this new product. You know, maybe I've got a boyfriend or a spouse, but I probably don't have a kid yet.
Share the payment or rent.
Right.
Well, what kind of price range are you looking at?
Well, we're building anywhere in the range from 60 to 85% of the average median income, which right now in Summit County is about $95,000.
So if I understand this, Jonathan, the city has decided to become a construction company, in effect. What prompted that decision? Was the market just not keeping up with demand?
Well, the market was keeping up with the demand, but the demand was for market rate housing, for people to come and move here. And I think one thing that's worth mentioning is we were having a number of long-term rental units turn into nightly rentals, VRBO and Airbnb. And so they were hitting the free market in a way that wasn't providing us with workers, not service workers, but city hall staff, firefighters, teachers. And we're sorely missing that piece of our year-round economy. And so for the city, it's not about profitability. We're subsidizing these. We have a nest egg and a redevelopment authority to help build housing. And we do have some land that we've been acquiring for 20 years. But it's a very finite resource. And so this is what I'd say a short-term gap or a plug or a step in a direction. But we're also working, again, with private developers and other people to find out how to leverage our finite resources.
Was this construction program profitable?
Again, it's not. It's very much being subsidized. It's not profitable. But what we do have is the land. And so when you chunk in the land into that pro forma for development, you can make it pencil out pretty quickly.
Okay.
It does get to 30 years later when you have an asset that's depreciated and is failing and it needs to be replaced. That's going to be maybe a harder question 30 years from now. And so the first projects we've owned and operated, the middle projects we've turned over to other people to operate for us. And now as we move into the future, you're seeing us start to partner with the private sector to deliver, develop, operate, and own and manage, because we think it's a better use of the public's resources.
As in any city, there's a percentage of the population that is, for lack of a better word, anti-growth. Yet Park City is seemingly growing rapidly. You've entered into the construction business. And as I've read, you've announced the annexation of some 1,200 acres recently. How do you reconcile these sort of opposing views?
We often laugh and say, don't ask us to justify our contradictions. So I appreciate the question. The annexation pursued recently really is annexing thousands of acres of land that was deed restricted to the city in a 1999 development agreement from the United Park City Mining Company that was in return for the development of Upper Deer Valley, which is called Flagstaff at the time. Now it's called Empire Pass. When that development agreement was consummated in the late 90s, it came with all this land that we're currently trying to annex, or the majority of it. Most of the land is deed restricted to equestrian and open space or recreation. There's another piece of land on the other side of Highway 40 next to a subdivision called Park City Heights that we intend to build affordable housing on, townhomes. And so I would say it's anything but a land grab. I would say it's everything reflecting our community's desire to be protected and not allow sprawl development. I would say not a portion of our community is anti-growth. I would say the strong majority of our
Is it?
community is anti-growth. And so again, the contradiction comes in when we say we're in the construction and development of affordable housing. Why are we in the construction business, but yet we continue to buy open space? We're annexing to protect our open space. We're annexing to allow development of more affordable housing. It's not annexation for more growth, more economy, more business, more sprawl. So it makes sense to me, but maybe I need to try to justify it more.
Well, maybe not, but yet the 1,200 acres is designed for open space, or will it be developed? Will the majority of it be developed?
The strong majority, about 90% of it, is actually on the other side of Highway 40.
Okay, the
That's
east side.
The east side, yes. And that's going to stay open space. It's got a soil repository on it. Anything that happens out there will have to be capped and remediated. So the limitations on the use per the deed restriction when it was given to the city, again, are for recreation or equestrian. There's a small piece of land that we bought mostly with open space money on the west side of Highway 40. And we're going to talk to the city council in the future, if they do annex it, about expanding our affordable housing program there.
What level of pushback do you get from kind of the anti-growth segment? Are they showing up at council meetings, writing letters, sending emails? Are they expressing their concern in a respectable manner?
I think respectable for sure. You're seeing regional development projects happen all around us, and I think that is worth noting. Is the city's policies buying open space? I think we have somewhere in the neighborhood of 20,000 acres of open space we've bought, peripheral around the city. That's caused development pressures both inside the city limits and outside all around our city limits to grow, and maybe even artificially. And our community has never hesitated, whether it be at a city council meeting or now on social media, to give that feedback. The COVID platform, with many of our council meetings for the better part of a year being remote, was very interesting in how it affected that process.
Mm-hmm.
It was sometimes clunky and awkward to wait for that public meeting and try to figure out if you had Zoom or you didn't have good bandwidth or you had to call in. Like, that was a little awkward. So we did see a switch into some social media platforms, and trying to understand the city's role in managing and engaging in that platform has been interesting. We've actually hired 3 new communications people to help us reflect that trend and that switch. And I think we're learning and getting better at it. But I also think at a national level, somehow people have felt more entitled or enabled to take pot shots and not really operate,
no doubt,
cleanly or respectfully.
Yes.
And that's been hard. And we're seeing some of that.
I'm sure it has been.
Sometimes it can feel a little sad or a little close to home.
Sure. I have read and personally experienced some major traffic issues in Park City. What's the city doing to address that issue?
Well, as we talked about, again, exporting technical workers, importing service workers, cost of living going up, so workers don't have a place to live. So what are we doing? There's really a short-term approach, which is we have a peak day management plan. So when the ski resorts exit or load out, and then during Sundance, we deploy a series of resources, everything from turning our shoulders on the state highways into bus rapid transit lanes, police at intersections, high visibility police in the streets, which is something we haven't done before, variable message boards to tell people, hey, it's 20 minutes if you go out to Highway 40, but it's 40 minutes if you go through Kimball's Junction. Hey, why don't you stay and have an appetizer or whatever after skiing? Don't jump in that mix right now.
Sure.
So trying to inform people, that's the shorter term approach. Longer term, I think it's a regional plan. We've talked about all the development at our borders. There's a lot of units continuing to be built. We're pretty fixed and confined and constrained in our historic street network. We don't have room to grow lanes. We can't build more highways.
Mm-hmm.
So trying to manage how they get in and out of Park City with our regional partners and UDOT's going to be really important. We have a project called Park City Forward, which is really about how we build a 30-year plan for our future. And that's really at the beginning. It's a long-term transportation master plan.
Parking seems to always be a problem in just about every city. Any specific plans to try to deal with that challenge?
There's no specific plans in place. We've had groping conversations about over the snow connections like a gondola system. We proved to ourselves with the Olympics in '02 that a satellite system, we had two 5,000 car satellite lots on either side of town, and we were able to bus people in. We basically kind of drew a big circle around the town and said, you can't bring cars in past here.
Mm-hmm.
That worked really, really well. Would another Olympic conversation and the federal funding that comes with it and the regional resources that could come with it help move that conversation along? I think it might. So that'll be an interesting conversation in the future. Would it be rubber tired? Would it be over the snow? I think there's a lot of opportunity in the future.
Sure, indeed. My guess is our viewers know the answer to this next question, but what's the dominant business industry in Park City?
Well, skiing. I mean, outdoor. And, when I moved here, it was to ski, but now I say I moved here for the mountains.
Sure.
We have a ton of trails that are available in the winter and the summer. We have all kinds of amenities regionally, whether it's fly fishing and horseback riding, to complement and supplement the skiing. People are looking for a year-round outdoor experience. So obviously, hotels and service workers, retail that supports it. But I think the one thing, as you look at our job percentages in town, the fourth highest is construction and real estate. So whether it's the surveyor or the appraiser or the assessor people, the title companies, we have a lot of people in the development business, including all the way down to contractors. Mm-hmm. People pounding nails.
You mentioned that you don't do a lot of corporate recruiting, but when you do, what kind of business are you looking to attract?
After the Olympic Games, we spent maybe 10 years looking at outdoor-based industry, bringing in people that reflect health and wellness in corporations. So you saw us compete for Amer Sports that ended up in Ogden. We brought in POC North America. Backcountry.com has been in our portfolio, and we've tried a number of outdoor-based companies. SIA is one of those. But recently, as our community has become more and more frustrated with the city's any role we take in facilitating growth or development of any kind, we've really shifted. We have about $30,000 a year we like to dole out to business retention grants. So if you're a small business or you're thinking of starting a small business, whether you're a baker or a coffee shop, we've done a number of small $20,000 and $10,000 grants to help you get over that cost of business startup, whether it's buying a canning line for a brewery that just started, which is our most recent, or helping Auntie M's, the bakery, get some additional kitchen equipment that she couldn't have afforded on her own. We like to invest in people who are attached to our community, who already are looking, to get ahead or stay in town and provide some of that, authentic local culture that I talked about. Some of the, just investing in ourselves.
Indeed. If you could attract a different type of business to add diversity, what would be on your wish list?
We talked long and hard about diversifying into the tech field many years ago and trying to bring in, corporate money or the Silicon Slopes money. And we realizing we were swimming uphill. There are, places like Salt Lake City with deeper resources than us able to compete in that field. And so what we end up doing is frankly just trying to build place, trying to make Park City a place that people want to come and visit. There's a ton of venture capital money in Park City and in the surrounding areas. Our job, we feel, is to really create a place where they can come, have a great experience on Main Street, have hotels that their visitors and their corporations can bring people up and put them at, and just make Park City a great place. So we tend to focus on building a place, building amenities, rather trying to compete in that market. If I could have my one wish list, the idea that we could have those corporations have their CEOs or their R&D team have a small office in town, but then partner with broader Summit County. There's a lot of regional opportunity in terms of square feet to develop, to build that little warehouse or build that little factory, something that we could have a regional based economy where both the city of Park City and our partners in broader Summit County, and then the regional way to dip into Salt Lake and the airport and our ways to import and export services. That's my dream, because I'm a big believer in the regional economy and the power of the state of Utah.
It sounds like the emphasis is on small to medium-sized businesses versus the gigantic company that would employ hundreds and hundreds of people.
Absolutely. The people we need to bring in aren't in the $100,000 to $150,000 range, and they're certainly not under that.
Sure.
If we're going to bring in people, I would want them to make north of $250,000 a year.
It sounds like tourism, broadly classified, is perhaps Park City's single most important industry. Is that healthy in the long run?
It's a great question. For 20 years, we've discussed once or twice a year about further diversifying of the economy. And we can't ever seem to shake what we got. We have a robust hotel base, a nightly rental bed base, and a service industry. Shifting away from that could be scary. We worry about global warming, but we're situated in many ways at a higher elevation with better snow than California and a lot of our competition. So we feel pretty good about sticking in the tourism-based economy.
Mm-hmm.
We do have to be careful, though. One wildfire could set us on our heels and irrevocably damage us.
Yeah. Well, Jonathan, we have time for just a couple more questions. What would you say is Park City's biggest single challenge?
It would be convenient to say transportation and housing. I would call that more. The biggest challenge is losing our soul. I mentioned it earlier, losing our character, losing the ability for people to find a way to live in town, that live, work, and play there, keeping an ability to raise a family in Park City.
You indicated that you'd been with the city for over 20 years. How's the city changed in the last 10 years?
I think the biggest change has been the influence of the corporate ski resorts. When they were owned by families, it was different. Mm-hmm. And Vail and Alterra have been wonderful partners in terms of the investment they've made into the ski resorts from a capital standpoint, into the investment they've made into our communities. They've been great, but they are still being driven by a bottom line. And it's fundamentally changed it. The Epic and the Icon Pass have brought a lot more people. People from regional, people from Salt Lake coming. The day skiers have increased tremendously. And while that's awesome and it's economically great, it's different.
No doubt. How will Park City change over the next 10 years?
I think we're going to become more exclusive and more expensive. With the regional growth pressures around us, I think you're going to have our high-end, more affluent visitors stay in Park City. They're going to stay in our hotels, and they're going to become attached to Main Street in the hotel experience. Our less affluent visitors, they're going to be staying peripherally, and Main Street might be a day in their portfolio of their visit. So it'll be different. And then our regional visitors is going to continue to be different. The day trip up to Salt Lake, as you see some of the other ski resorts, their traffic problems are worse.
Indeed.
They're charging for parking.
Yes.
We're seeing more and more influx coming from those Epic and Icon passes. So I think we'll become more exclusive in Park City proper, unfortunately.
Well, things are constantly changing.
There's no doubt they always continue to evolve.
That concludes this episode of Stringham Real Estate Edge. Today's program is brought to you by Stringham Schools, educating real estate professionals since 1989. Visit stringhamschools.com to learn more. We want to thank today's guests, and don't forget to tell us what you think in the comments section below. I'm Gary Barnes, and I'll see you on the next episode of Stringham Real Estate Edge.